Hello and welcome along to TGP Has a Podcast. Thank you for joining us for episode 3 of this 5th series. This week we have a chat with Chris Thurgood. Now Chris is a man who has been part of the TGP series for a little while and always has plenty to talk about. He has been involved in a fair few highs and quite a few controversies as well, even more than me, and that's saying something. But we get a chance to have a chat with Chris about how these happened, why these happened, and will he be racing again soon? Enjoy. So, Chris, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a long time coming having your podcast here. You know, you've been a member of TGP series for a long old time now, and, you've certainly got some stories to share, as I'm sure we'll find out. But I guess, first of all, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you here, to be quite honest with you. We've got some great questions lined up, as I'm sure you cannot wait to hear. That said,
Yeah.
How did you first come across us at the TGP series? I mean, was it just by chance?
Strange. I started on Twitter about 2013, so it's going a long time ago. Just coming across, people on Twitter that likes the same interests I do, so F1 predominantly. And a lot of them seem to be, Dom, Jack, yourself, Jean-Luc. I didn't really realise until about a year afterwards that you were all racing in the same league. So I think it was F1 2015 or Project Cars, whatever came first. I'm not too sure.
It was either 2015 or 2014, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 2015. I asked Dom if there was a spot available, and he said yes. And then that's it. Rest is history, really.
And had you done any league racing prior to that, or was it just sort of purely by coincidence? No, it was just,
purely
this sounds
coincidence.
Like it could be a good idea.
I never really thought about doing it at all until, I had PS4 and then F1 2015, and just went from there, really.
And obviously, you've already mentioned a couple of the series that you took part in with us there. You mentioned about TGP 1 and Project Cars. I'd like to start with the Project Cars, actually, before we come on to talk about TGP 1, because actually that is where you've had the majority of your success with us in TGP, including yourself being a two-time champion in seasons 2 and 3 on the original Project Cars game before Project Cars 2, where the likes of Owen Quimby really took off and set the sort of world alight in that one. So what was it about that game necessarily, do you think, that you suited you so well? I mean, I think you missed season 1, actually. I don't think you took part in season 1.
No, I think that's, again, with the time frame, I think that's when I joined TGP. I think it was after season 1. Mm-hmm. So I remember doing Project Cars and then season 2 and then F1 2015 at the same time. So I don't know. At the time, I would just buy any racing game on PS4. And for some reason, I just spent a lot of my time back then doing Project Cars. Got used to the handling model. And then when I got a chance to race in the league, I thought, fuck it, why not? But yeah, honestly, it just suits my handling style, how the game runs.
And did you expect to be coming in and competing for titles straight away?
I am quite competitive.
That's a surprise.
I thought I'd be, maybe top 8, top 6. But, the first few races where I was consistently, top 3 or 4, I'd started to get even more competitive and started practicing in my spare time. And, season 2 champion. Didn't think I'd have it, but there you go.
And obviously in that season 2, you fought with the likes of Alex, Jean, Wingsman, I think, and even Cuman, of all people, who was quite quick on the original TGP Cars games. Obviously, you mentioned doing a little bit of racing with Jean as well, but how did you feel suddenly then, competing with the same people week after week? This is obviously a completely new experience for you. So before it was purely just racing people accidentally online. So to then suddenly take that to the same people week in, week out, how did you find yourself adapting to that sort of challenge?
I just took it on the chin, really. I didn't think it was a challenge in that respect, apart from, I'd find out everyone's positive, like their what they're good at, their advantages, their disadvantages. So, for example, yourself, Mike, you're very good at cutting corners, like Brands Hatch. Or Jean, he'd be very good at defending. It'd just be working around those little nuances of each individual driver.
And I suppose as well that comes with that. Not only do we have the change of dynamics for you suddenly then in who you were racing, but also what you were racing. In those early days of TGP cars, it was a different car you raced every week. What did you find yourself particularly? Which car, I should say, did you find yourself particularly getting to grips with sooner?
I it's going to be quite a boring answer, but I do like my GT cars and my Le Mans prototype cars. I'm not very good with front wheel drive cars. So when we did I think it was Clio Cups, I think that was front
There
wheel
was
drive.
some
I wasn't
Clio
sure.
Cups, yeah.
I wasn't particularly strong in that. It's just more because I can't deal with an understeery car. I tend to have a more preference, more of like a balanced rear end car. So anytime we did Le Mans in the prototypes, I'm pretty sure I won every time we went around there, just because it would suit my hand, like how I like my cars to handle to a T. So
And that's because you like a car a little bit more nervous on the rear end, therefore, I'm presuming, or?
yeah, not too unstable, but that helps with the traction in terms of getting the car to turn corner exit.
And what do you think? So you mentioned obviously the handling model of a game like Project Cars 1, but why did you find yourself spending a lot of time there on that game, regardless of racing in the league? So do you think that assisted you in terms of being able to compete as well?
One sec. Have some water. Yeah, I mean the campaign I thought was quite enjoyable to race with different categories. I think I spent at least 250 hours just on my own time, just playing the game, playing different cars, different tracks. I think that got me very suited to how the game works. And so, yeah, I'd say in terms of the league, be nice and easy in that respect.
Well, I mean, you say that in that season you won your first title. You only actually won one race, which was in Zolder in a BMW GT3, which obviously you mentioned is a car that you, or category of car that you particularly like. And it was on the final night. Doing it when you need to do it most, I suppose. But why do you think that you weren't able to take a win sooner? Why do you think it took you so long?
You and your questions. Um, I honestly don't know that, mate, to be honest. I guess I was just the most consistent in that respect. So I would finish in the top 5 or 4 often. I guess I probably wasn't the strongest in any particular week, but I was not far behind, the top drivers. So it might have been Court, it might have been Jean, it might have been yourself, but I wasn't far behind.
Well, you mentioned Core. Obviously, that's who you then battled with for the title the following season. When you were much more consistent, you took 5 wins across the course of that season. And actually, you went into the final night behind him.
Oh
And it
yeah,
was,
I was at least 30 points behind, I think, that night. I
yeah,
didn't
it
think
was
I'd
it
win
was
it
a
at all.
big gap. But Court struggled with some late setup changes, which in the end is what he puts down to the reason why he didn't take that title. And he ended up finishing 5th and 13th on the 2 races that night. You pulled back with a third and a second.
Yeah.
As you've just said, by your own admission, you didn't expect to win that title going into the final night. So, do you think that actually helped you in the way that you raced? Pressure off. I've got nothing to lose.
I think it's always in the back of your head when there is a chance of winning mathematically. So I did have one eye on Court all the time. But I wasn't prepared to lose it to try and get another position. It was like, I'll just run my race, and then I'll just see what happens. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't.
Well, it worked out for you at the end of the day. You won the title. Then looking obviously later on in your career in TGP cars, you took then another 4 wins in season 5, but you were unable to beat Owen, who actually went on to take 3 consecutive championships. Did it frustrate you at that point, being a 2-time champion, that you couldn't compete with Owen, and he was just, by evidently the statistics, just better driver?
I mean, Mike, if I had 20 hours a day to spend on project cars, I would. But unfortunately, I wasn't like Owen. So he had all the time in the world back then when he was in his hotel dorm room, or not hotel dorm, what am I saying? His student dorm room, shall I say? um, so I didn't have the time on my hands back then to compete. I think I am someone that requires a decent amount of practice to get to grips with the game and each car every week to compete. Not in the respect that I don't have any natural talent. I think I do, but I think I just need that baseline, which I couldn't really have time to spend mastering, which is probably why after season 4, they kind of went down a little bit.
And do you think you would have been able to challenge Owen had you been able to put the time to the game?
I would say so, yes. Definitely.
Because at that point as well, if I'm right in saying, I think it was about season 5, season 6, sorry, that it switched that we just ran with one car category for the season. And if I remember rightly, it was GT3s as well, which obviously, by your own admission, was a car category that you were able to perform in quite well. Obviously, you took your first win in the BMW Z4, but what actually was a car that you found within that category on the cars game that you really grew accustomed to?
I was trying to. This is 8 years ago now. So
Well,
long ago.
you're not you're not like Phil Barger and in your 80s yet, so you've still got a good memory.
Don't know about that. I've got 2 kids to deal with. I think there's the Beamer was a Beamer. I think Merc, the AMG.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of my go-tos because that was also a go-to in one of the other games that I've raced in the TGP with another series. And I think the other car, it was the Lambo GT3 as well. I think that was in the game.
Well, that was a bit about.
Wrong.
Well, we'll find out. You probably know better than I do. Even 8 years ago, I can barely remember what cars I was driving 8 years ago. So let's move away from TGP cars now, and let's look at TGP 1. So you hit TGP 1, well, hit the ground running, we should say. And again, much like you were experiencing towards the last stage of Project Cars, but this obviously at the beginning of TGP 1 career, you missed out on the season 24 title, which was on F1 2015, to Wingsman, then, now Ace of Pace, by just 6 points. And that
famous season.
And that, before we get onto other bits within that, was mainly down to an incredible run that you had, where you won 5 of all of the last 5 races.
Yeah.
Before we sort of come on to the difficulties of the rest of the season, how were you able to put that sort of run of form together?
So at the time I was in doing season 25, I just quit uni, so I had time to myself, and also I just found the game very comfortable and easy to drive online. It just suited my driving style again. I'd done it. It was a bit of it was like setup tweaks I was doing, the practicing, and a bit of it was being a bit lucky with the track limits, shall I say, on certain races. I'm sure Dom is probably going to be laughing when he hears this later. But yeah, it just all clicks into place. But I'm sure you're going to mention it soon. There was one race which kind of swayed the title, and I'm still bitter about. But I'm sure you can ask that question in a minute.
Well, no, let's come on to that now then Chris. So, what race is it that you're bitter about? Sorry, I don't seem to have that written on my notes.
Race it was. I know what race it was. I don't know what number race it was. Malaysia. Infamous Ginger
Paul with the double toe.
Paul with the double toe. In the wet. Me and my little... was it in a Toro Rosso that season?
You were in a Toro Rosso that season. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember that vividly.
Yeah, so... It was a fantastic race, like in general. Before the last 2 laps happened, I was catching up to Wingsman. I think he was Paul behind me, and putting it politely, like we had a coming together on the straight. I'm not going to say any views which might harm the TGP series.
Chris, we're all friends here. This podcast is for you to air any grievances you have in the open.
Well, me and Wingsman had a rivalry that went on for quite a while through F1 and another series, which we'll get on later. But yeah, it didn't end well after that race, put it politely, in terms of just not the language, but in terms of the friendship in the game.
And do you think that actually spurred you on towards the end of the season, as sort of like a do or die attitude then arose from that?
I guess it did spin a little bit, despite my best efforts of trying to persuade the stewards to give a rather large penalty to Wingsman. It didn't happen. Yeah, but I think at that point I knew it was going to be a bit too late, even if I had an immaculate run of form at the end, which I did. But I think at that point, after Malaysia, I was still about 70 points behind in the title fight. I think it was fourth at that point. So a bit like Project Cars, where season 2, where I only really realised until like the last few races where I'm not in the fight, but if I just run my race, I could be in a shout.
And obviously, earlier on that season, it wasn't plain sailing for you. Do you think that mistakes that you had earlier in the season were the reason that you missed out on that title? Do you think you could have been consistent enough?
Yeah, I definitely remember not being very consistent. I don't remember many races that I did. Obviously, Malaysia was definitely one of them that I remember. But I remember the first half of the season I was finishing 7th, 10th, 5th, 8th. But that wasn't because of mistakes. That was just pure pace. So, if only I could be a bit more consistent up front.
Well, and if only you could find
got that title, So
if only you could find some corners to cut as well, that's what it's...
exactly. But there's no Brands Hatch in F1 2015, so...
No, that's why I didn't do very well. If anyone's unsure what this reference is, go back and listen to my podcast, and Court, for that matter, earlier on. He talks about it a lot as well. So you missed out on that title, but after that, you never looked like fighting for a title again. I mean it in the best way possible, but was 2015... No. I mean, you mentioned that you could be so comfortable playing it. Do you just think that it all came together for you on that game, and that was just where you were strongest?
I guess. I mean, I did spend a lot of time on that game compared to 2016 and 2017, which I believe I also played in TGP in future seasons with. But yeah, it just all came together for me. 2016, I don't know why, I just didn't like the game at all. It just didn't suit me or my driving style.
And if I remember rightly as well, you did take part in the seasons with obviously the change of regulations that came in 2017, so from F1 2017 onwards. But and that you didn't find help you as well. Obviously, very different style of driving cars, a lot more downforce. In theory, a lot more grip, and in some instances, a lot more rear instability. But that didn't suit you either.
I guess not. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to explain, I suppose. But after 2016, I'd say I wasn't spending as much time playing F1 games anymore. I wasn't really taking an active interest. Just personally doing like career mode or just random lobbies or fine tuning my setup in time trial just wasn't really for me. I was just playing something else instead. So when it came to doing league racing, I wasn't as fast if I finished, 5th or 8th. So
you ended up then in TGP1, or to date, I should say. You never know, you might make a comeback, with 10 race wins and 6 pole positions. Obviously, if I'm right in saying, I think all of those coming on F1 2015. Do you see a scenario in which you could add to that tally again?
I would love
even
to.
Even if not necessarily in TGP1, maybe say in TGP2. Would you think you could see yourself make a comeback?
I think in the next few years, I'd like to come back. Obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, I have 2 kids, so between 2 kids and work, it's been very difficult to have any free time. Obviously, Mike, you can't relate apart from selling houses. But
I just want to
I'd
say
like
I'm
to.
more than happy with that.
Yeah, you stick to your houses, all
Yeah,
right?
I'll stick to my houses. You stick
Pull
to your
out and sell your houses. Good life.
well, no, don't pull out. No, stay in the game and buy the bloody house. Don't pull out. Anyway, we're not talking about your pull-out game, which is awful. I want to talk about your future TGP career.
But
So
I
can you come
think
back?
I'd say in the next 18 months, I can be league racing again. That's what I'd like to say.
And you want to do that?
Yes.
And can you be competitive again in TGP1 or wherever it is you're competing?
Competitive, maybe towards the rear end of the field. um, I'd like to say so. I mean, I think I'm at a point where I'd like to get a bit more of that competitive blood flowing, where my poor mind has been warped by children. I like some more free time on my hands. So I'd definitely say with just a little bit of practice, I think I can be up there.
Good. Right. Well, that's it for F1. Now we've got the big one to talk about. So, TGP Dirt. Before we come
Yeah.
on to quite a major talking point, let's revisit Wingsman for a second. So, from seasons 1 to 3, for anyone who doesn't know listening to this, obviously TGP Dirt made a comeback in recent years and have been doing very well. However, we did do TGP Dirt very early on. I think this was about 2015, 2016. So
It's
right
when
at
the
the
game
heart.
came out, yeah.
Yeah. So right at the heart of yours and Wingsman's rivalries in TGP1 as well, and probably in TGP Cars. Let's be honest. But how good was that? How good was just sort of having someone that you were really evenly matched with, and fighting for championships with them?
Yeah, it's a very odd time. I think it's a good 12 to 18 months, I'd say, across P-Cars, Dirt, and F1. It was always me and Wingsman, and we'd always find ourselves pretty much near each other on the track. Like, we were the main focal point. It was challenging. Like, Wigsman was a very good driver back then, very good. I know he took a lot of time and effort to try and beat me, and obviously beat everyone else. I think that spurred me on as well. And we did we won a lot of things individually during those games. It is a shame to not really have him in the league anymore, because I think he'd had a nice competitive edge as well to the league. But what was done was done. So there you go.
And obviously you were champion in season 1 and 2. Why do you think you were able to do so well in those early times? You took 8 event wins and 35 stage wins in those few seasons as well. Obviously, a very different form of motorsport, evidently, to the likes of Project Cars and TGP1. Why do you think that discipline suited you as well as it did as well?
Talent. Again, I don't know. I just had a lot of time to myself, a lot of practicing. I did prefer the tarmac stages naturally, as being someone that likes to drive on F1 2015 and Project Cars. I naturally suited myself to tarmac, so Monte Carlo. I don't remember any other tarmac events. That's my rally knowledge gone. And then that just came across in the snow and the gravel.
Well, it worked out for you in the long run. So, Chris, you found a loophole within
Okay. Your
TGP
question's
Dirt.
already wrong. I didn't find the loophole, but yeah, you can finish
So,
it off
so,
now.
well, come on then. So, how did you?
God.
So it was effectively, for those who don't know, and I'm sure Chris is going to give us fatten this out a little bit more. But there was a way in which, if you timed it right, you could leave halfway through a stage or towards the end of the stage, as long as you hadn't crossed the line, and you could go back and do it again. effectively learning the stage in exactly the same conditions and having a practice. But you could do this as many times as you wanted until you effectively got it right. Now, this was something that wasn't well known within the league until quite a while afterwards. So, Chris, I ask,
Thank you.
how did you find out about this?
Yeah. Thank you so much for putting me into a corner. How did I find out? I don't remember how I found out. I think I heard or I saw on Twitter that Wingsman was doing it. I could be wrong. This was a long time ago. It was like 9 years ago. Could be wrong. I was under the belief that Wingsman was doing it.
And what was it that you were doing?
So, basically, any stage in a custom championship event, you could be driving, you make a mistake. If you turn off the console, turn it back on, you can go back into that event and start that stage again. And it wouldn't block you. It wouldn't, if you did a time and you reset it, it wouldn't, that wouldn't be set in stone. It would get wiped. So you could do it again.
Well,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes perfect
sense. And so, at what point did you start doing this? Sorry, no. Let's ask that differently. When did you find out that you could do this?
When? It was probably season 1. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's when I saw Wingsman was quite dominant in that early part of the season. I was like, because of our rivalry from F1, I was like, I don't want this prick to win. I'm not going to lie to you. So it's like, I know this exploit. I'm going to get. It's not cheating. Well, at the time, it wasn't cheating because no one knew. It's like Lance Armstrong. Unfortunately, he's got no Tour de France now. But
You've still got 2 dirt titles.
Yeah, I look forward to going on Twitter in half an hour and seeing, my golds are gone. Sorry, my silvers are gone. After this, I'm never doing this again. By the way.
I better hope this is actually recorded.
Good. I fucking hope so too. Yeah, so I think it was quite early in stage 1, but I don't know what event it was. But then I literally carried that on until it got patched. I think it got patched in season 3 or 4.
Season 3, a new update, and it showed on the dirt site when someone had done repeated attempts, which I think is how it was discovered.
Right. So if Dom, I'm sure Dom has all the records somewhere. If you go to season 3, you'd probably see a point where my form starts to drop off a little bit. And then you'd be like, oh, that's when the patch came in.
It's that obvious.
I think it is that obvious because I would do like 3 or 4 actual practice runs of each stage.
As many as that?
Well, no, and this was not in the actual custom.
Oh, I see. Right,
league
sorry.
event. This was like actual practice.
Okay.
I'd do like 3 or 4. I think when it was the actual time to do the actual league stages, I wouldn't say 3 or 4. There would be some where I've done like 10, 15 times. I'd have had to reset the console to do an actual stage time. I know, and obviously the reason that we could do this is if you set your console to offline mode. No one will know that you're online.
Okay. Yes.
So that was also a big factor as to why you could do it. So if you go back onto the console, you log in, it won't say, "Oh, Chris is online." It'll just think I'm offline. Everyone will think I'm offline. So I could just do this over and over again, and obviously no one knew until 2 seasons later.
Wow. So it's I'd say ingenuitive. You've got to do what you got to do to win, haven't you? At the end of the day, and that's what you and Wingsman did. Yeah, and it was probably, as you quite rightly pointed out, your motivation was fueled by the rivalry that you'd created with him.
well, we created together when he took me out of Malaysia.
Not that
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
not that you're appointing blame, of course.
no, of course not. He's a
No.
dirty, dirty, dirty Scandinavian.
Um, but since then, I mean, obviously there might be some inner politics to this. Dom's never let me know, but you've never made a return to TGP, I don't think, have you?
um, I might have. No, I haven't actually. No.
Do you see yourself being able to? Now obviously TGP has moved to modern rallying, which is very exciting. Do you
Cool.
see yourself making a return potentially with that?
I don't think so. I think there are a lot of drivers that are very competitive on that game. I think it wouldn't be worth my while. To be fair, I think I'd be, towards the back half of the pack in most events. It just wouldn't. It would be fun to do. Don't get me wrong, but for me, it won't be fulfilling.
Interesting. I thought you might have been a bit more up for it from that. Um, let's move away from where you've done well in. Well, not necessarily. You haven't necessarily done bad in what we're about to talk about next, but TGP GT. Obviously, you've played Gran Turismo games for a long time, so GT
Oh yeah.
Sport coming around was a sort of added bonus rather than necessarily as something a venture into the unknown for you. But did you think you would do better than just taking one win?
Yeah, I mean, considering I've been a Sony fanboy. Well, not a fanboy. I've been a Sony. I've got all the consoles. I've been playing Gran Turismo since I've been 7, 8 years old. I've got every single game at home, like a physical copy. So yes, obviously when the GT League was announced, I was absolutely relishing the chance to play competitively on probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. Sadly, it wasn't enough. Rory and Court were absolutely phenomenal in terms of their pace, despite my best efforts. I mean, the win that I got, I think it was around the ring, wherever it's called,
Blue Moon Bay.
Blaming Bay. That's the one infield.
Yep.
I got quite lucky with that one. There were some incidents in that race, but I was still third pretty much most of the races, which I was quite happy with. But there was a lot of races where I was just a few tenths shy of, being pole, having that ultimate race pace, which was quite annoying. But I think if we do another league in the future with GT, if the lobbies get fixed, I would be more than happy to give that another go.
Oh, that's interesting. And obviously you mentioned Roy and Court. I mean, they were just on another level. But what was quite interesting is obviously both of their different approaches. Roy, traditional, he raced on a pad, whereas Court was the sort of full rig setup. Did did hearing that frustrate you then more that you weren't able to get on pace with them, particularly because setups were banned? So this was purely just on car choice and, well, player ability.
I mean, I was on a pad as well. I don't have a wheel, so I was racing on a pad like Rory. I mean, a lot of the times it was qualifying was more or less neck and neck with him than race pace. And either make a mistake or just wasn't consistent lap to lap. But yeah, there's always like 2 or 3 attempts you can think that you gain every lap. You can always improve, right? So it was frustrating.
Do you think that maybe then with tyre wear turned down or even off, you would have done better in that scenario?
No, I don't think I'm that bad with tyre wear. I think I'm more one of the better ones when it comes to tyre wear. There's quite a lot of easy ways of minimizing the tyre wear. So, changing up a gear, changing your brake bias. There's very simple things. It didn't help where I was in the Mercedes for most of those seasons. It did tend to chew its tires more, but I was more than happy to, lose out on tire wear if it meant I was driving a car I was more comfortable with.
And obviously, as you mentioned, the GTs being one of your favourite cars, do you think you then made a mistake in some of the cars that you chose? Because at the very beginning, it was much more of a free choice. Obviously, towards the end, there was limited on who could drive or how many people could drive certain cars. Looking back now, do you think you should have chosen something different? You mentioned the Mercedes that you drove. I think you were in a Lamborghini as well at one point, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, so I did. I think it was the Merc in season 1, and then for season 2, I decided to go Lambo purely because Roy was in a Lambo, and I wanted to see if I could match him or beat him. Turns out that was a really bad fucking error, because I was miles off of Roy pretty much every single week. But yeah, it is tough to pick the car that you want. But I understand that nothing can be perfect when it comes to league racing, can it?
No, no, it can't. So let's, well, I suppose to a certain degree, take a bit of a step away from racing now. And Rocket League. You loved a bit of Rocket League.
Jesus Christ, that is a
Wow,
throwback.
yeah,
Thank you for that one.
you loved a bit of Rocket League,
I
and you were
didn't think you'd
successful
mention
as
that
well.
tonight. Yeah, I didn't think you'd mention that tonight.
Well, Chris, yeah, you've got to credit Dom for his list of prompts. I got to say, you you actually won a Rocket League title with, of all people, your brother, and then Flexi.
Sausage fingers, yeah.
How on earth did that happen? How on earth did that become a team?
I don't know. I scored like 2 goals the whole time, and they were just flukes. They were tap-ins. I don't. I think honestly, the rest of the teams that were playing were just dog shit. I honestly don't know, because
I had a
literally did
mate of mine
nothing.
from college playing my team with Chris Johnson. So, we were never going to do very well. Henry, who, never turned up, is dad a light bulb salesman, and Chris Johnson and me. I mean, we were never going to do well. So, yeah, I suppose you did have it quite easy.
Exactly. I mean, if my brother can win a medal, then what is wrong with the world, honestly? you know.
And I suppose just before we come to the end, you've mentioned it a couple of times. You would like to come back to racing and give it a little bit of time. You might be competitive, but is that just going to be F1, or is that going to? Oh, you obviously mentioned GT as well. If that makes a comeback, so by the sounds of it, you're quite open to multiple disciplines.
Yeah, I think I'm more into not like it's not sim racing. It's more sim than F1. It's something like a new Project Cars game, something like Project Cars, like a new franchise comes out, and we all buy it, and we do a league of it. I'll do it. Or Gran Turismo, I'll do it. F1, maybe, maybe not. It depends on future games. Obviously, the last 3 games from Codemasters have been pretty shit. Been pretty poor. It's just not worth spending the money for me personally. I'd rather spend it on a game that I'd actually play a lot of. But for sure, I think if there is that chance on the horizon, I'd definitely go for it.
That's good to hear. Well, I'm sure I speak for everybody. You are a legend of the series, so it'd be great to have a name like you back, whatever discipline that might be in. So, Chris, we're almost finished. You may or may not be pleased to hear. So we're going to finish off as we usually do with some quick fire questions, if we may. So, first things first, favorite track to race at on any game?
Quick, be all day at this rate. Jesus. That's actually quite a hard question.
Is it?
I'm going to say, yeah, it is for me, actually. Suzuka.
Okay, I didn't expect that. Don't know why, but don't expect that. Least favorite track to race at any game?
Miami Autodrome.
Yeah, that's pretty
Terrible track.
Miami. That's the F1 one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Who's the person you enjoy racing against the most?
Jean-Luc is easy to annoy.
I'm sure he'll really appreciate hearing that. And then I really don't think I don't think we need to ask this one. But who's your least favorite person to race against?
Well, obviously I don't know where he might be dead now, so who knows. So back then, Wingsman, And then now I'd probably say Jack Pearson.
Oh, interesting. Okay, why is that?
No reason.
Fair enough.
Just Jack Pearson.
And last but not least, then, Chris, you've been great to have on. I really appreciated it. I think this has been great fun, actually. So I've really enjoyed this. If TGP were to hold a league on any game, what game would you wish that to be?
Any game. Let's be really peculiar now, shall we?
Oh, great.
Yeah. Maybe for all the fanboys out there, I'm just gonna say it now. Let's do a GT Fortnite League. Get it done. Dom, you hearing me now? Get it done.
Oh, good. Well, on that bombshell, Chris, it has been an absolute honour having you on, and thank you.
No worries.
You know, and thank you for being honest with your answers as well. I think that's what we want you all to come on here for, is we want to have an honest chat. So I do appreciate the honesty.
Make sure you rate it 18 plus. All right.
Yeah, I might have to at this rate. So I haven't asked this to anybody else, but if you, I think it's appropriate. Where are we going to see you again? What are you going to pop up and do with us next? At the moment, it's mainly sort of chat based. So, where are we going to see Chris in relation to the TGP series next?
Oh, I mean, I'll be joining the party in 5 minutes, won't I? So there you go.
Well, there we go. What an anticlimax to what I thought was quite a guy's question.
I mean, end of the year. League racing, end of the year.
Obviously we've had plenty of joy on in the past on some GTA playlists. Maybe with GTA 6 coming out soon, maybe some more of those will return. Who knows?
Oh, GTA series. That sounds like a good idea.
I tell you what, those GTA playlists were fantastic, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Weren't they? You
already mentioned, winding up John, your favourite driver to race against, but it was even more fun on a GTA playlist.
Up until 4 in the morning, just to hear him shouting down the fucking microphone. Fantastic stuff.
that was a peak in life. That was definitely a peak in life.
Oh, the early 20s, such a great time.
Wasn't it just? Chris, thank you once again. We'll leave you to your either go and check your children are asleep or to join the party. But we will hopefully see you on track. Well, by the sounds of it, towards the end of the year.
That'd be great. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
So there we have it, a chance to sit down with Chris Thurgood, an elusive man in the TGP series with plenty to say, and it's nice to hear someone be as honest as he has been over his time in the series, and someone who genuinely seems very hopeful they'll be able to return in the near future. Next week, we have a chat with Paul McGuinness, a man who has also been part of the series for a while, enjoying plenty of success in TGP 1 and 2. So for now, we look forward to seeing you then. Goodbye.